Hi, everyone. This is Jeff Clark of the Paydirt Prospector here in beautiful Vancouver at the Metals Investor Forum. I'm here with Brad Peters, the CEO of Pacific Empire Minerals. So, Brad, thanks for joining me here.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. So we always start with the people. So, Brad, let's start with you and your background. Tell us about some of the things you've done, some successes you've had, and tell us about your team. Let's start with the people and why should we listen to you?
Well, thanks, Jeff. I do have a background in geology. I went to the University of British Columbia, studied geology. Prior to that, I have a background in broadcast communications and television. When one industry was in the tank, I went to the other, and I eventually made my way back into the mineral exploration industry, and I'm very excited to be here still. As I said, my background is geology. I'm not a PGO, but I think I've done a very good job here in probably the last few years here of making sure that I've surrounded myself with a very competent technical team.
Yes.
That's anchored by our senior geologic advisor, Dr. Paul Johnson, who was Tech's senior porphyry geologist for many years. I think it's really no exaggeration to say that Paul Johnson has really seen it all. And Paul was really the impetus for me being so aggressive on getting a hold of the Trident property that we had back in 2014 and 2013, had to drop it in 15. But it was really Paul that sort of clearly identified, I think, what we're looking at, which is a bona fide porphyry that's mineralized, a very well endowed porphyry on that property. In addition to Paul, we have OrQuest Consulting, which is Doug and George Cavey, and a young lady named Jennifer Oskowski. I originally met Jennifer actually when she was visiting some of our properties on behalf of First Quantum. She's a very, very talented, very knowledgeable porphyry geologist, a copper geologist as well.
Great.
And been very fortunate now to make sure that we have very, very strong advisory group around us.
That's great. Now you have two projects. So tell us briefly about, you're looking for copper in BC for both of these. So give us the bird's eye view of both these projects.
Absolutely. We are looking for copper, as you mentioned, but more specifically, we're looking for copper projects that are enriched in gold. We are focused exclusively on copper gold porphyry systems. And as we've heard a number of times in these talks, if you're looking for a copper gold system, a copper gold porphyry, and you have goals of having that become a mine, you need to be anchored by infrastructure. So bird's eye view, we are looking for big systems, big copper gold systems in areas with access and infrastructure, which really what that translates into is you can build a mine. And for us, we can sell it to a major. And in the areas we're in, we've got multiple majors. So the key to really, we're surrounded by them. So the key to really maximizing our mission is discovery.
Yeah.
We're a discovery play company. We are obsessed with discovery. But in order to maximize the value for our shareholders, it's important that if we do make a discovery, we have multiple majors that
may want to
have to have it. Not may want it, they have to have it.
Right, there you go.
And that's taking really a book out of, or a page out of Robert Friedland's The Big Score.
Yeah.
When, they had, Inco and Falconbridge had to have that deposit.
Yeah.
And that's what drove the price up. So we're in an area where you can build a mine and where the majors want to be.
Now, I described the story here, as you know, as Indiana Jones in the movie, and they suddenly realized the Germans were digging in the wrong place.
That's
and
right.
I described Pacific Empire as maybe digging in the wrong direction. And now you realize, along with your tech CEO, if you just turn the drills around, you might be going down the center of that porphyry. Have I described this opportunity correctly?
I think you've described it perfectly. And what's really interesting is that, yes, in the 70s when they drilled it, it was before they really understood porphyry systems. And Falconbridge in the early 70s when they drilled it, they were looking for a near surface, structurally controlled copper deposit, which is going to be linear. And the traditional way to drill in our business, all deposits, is drill across them to get true thickness.
Yeah.
Now, by doing that, you're drilling away from the porphyry, essentially.
The center.
Right. We're not the first to do this, and it seems a little cheeky to go down these fingers, but the reality is, it's how you have to go about doing it.
To
get to the porphyry, right? I mean, we're not the only ones that are going to be doing this, but a lot of companies and people I speak to still hesitate. They think, well, it just seems so cheeky, but this is really, I mean, I mentioned it in our talk. This is how SolGold found Cascabel. They had one of these fingers, they went down it, and a few hundred meters down, it blew out, and there was the mine.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you want to find out where the finger's coming from, you've got to chase it.
Yeah,
and that's what we're looking at doing, which really involves turning the drill literally 180 degrees.
Right. Now you've done some geophysical work. You've done some background and baseline work to really gather up some evidence here, and you just completed a flyover survey, I believe.
That's right.
So airborne survey. So tell us what all this data is starting to tell you now about this deposit.
Well, I'm going to go back to 2010 when I first identified this district in conjunction with another gentleman I was working with, targeting very large regional features in British Columbia. It was initially the soil geochemistry that got us in here in conjunction with a very interesting, very large sort of regional scale structural setup. Once we identified that, we started looking at the area. We realized that the Trident project had a spectacular soil anomaly. We compiled that back in 2011 and 2012. And from then on, it's just been one after the other, one layer after the other, year after year. We had that project until 2015. And we were successful in basically digitizing and looking at all the drill data, historical induced polarization. There had been previous airborne magnetic surveys done. We did in 2015 another IP survey, a rather large one that covered most of the property. But more recently here, upon acquisition of the property for us 100%, when we got it 100% and own it now, we did complete a magnetotelluric survey, which we just released the news preliminary from that the other day. This is a type of geophysical survey I'd never done before. And I was very, very curious to see, firstly, what it would look like, and a bit surprised when the data came in that there's a fair bit of data here. This is a lot of data to go through. So I've certainly made sure that I brought on the right people to help us analyze it. And but magnetotellurics, essentially what we're looking for, I think, is going to show us alteration patterns, which sure looks like it right now, and plumbing systems. And that's what we're hoping for. And in the preliminary data, that's certainly what we see on Trident. That seems to be what we're looking at. I think in the next few weeks, as we sort of peel the onion back, and we're going to be taking that data that we presented in 2D, and I think soon we're going to be able to see it in 3D now. And I think that's going to be quite interesting. And it's going to, I think, really going to help people understand, really, and myself as well, and shareholders and potential investors, really what we're looking at here,
right?
And what we're going to be focusing on going forward.
So you have a little bit more work to do, and then you do plan to drill later this
Absolutely.
year. So tell us about the upcoming drill program, even though it's a few months away, I believe.
Yep.
And then when we might expect assay results. So tell us about the catalyst for this year.
I think what we're looking to do here is we've got a few things to do, as you mentioned. One of the most important things we have to do is really dive into the historical drill core. There's a lot there. And so we're going to do that first. That won't take too long. And following that, our goal is to diamond drill in the late summer, fall. And that's exactly what we're going to do, is turn that drill 180 degrees. We are going to take into account some of what we've seen here on the MT, I think, but I don't think it's going to radically change how we go about the first one or two holes. But the goal is to turn the drill 180 degrees, get into these fingers. Ideally, it should be relatively known mineralization, we think. The real question is what happens at the end of that 300 meters we know about. Does it continue? Ideally, it continues, and that hole keeps going to, ideally 1,000 meters, 1,200 meters. That would be your discovery. That would be what we're looking for. Yeah, that's great. Well, we certainly wish you well. Thanks, Brad. Jeff. I'm on board. Thanks for joining me. I'm Jeff Clark at the Metals Investor Forum in Vancouver. Thanks for watching.